Welcome back to the We Are More Than Mom podcast. Today, we're joined by Jocelyn and Aaron Freeman, also known as the Freemans, bestselling authors, podcast hosts, relationship coaches, and parents. They know firsthand the juggle of raising kids while nurturing both the partnership and yourself. And together, they've helped thousands of couples strengthen their marriages. In this episode, we're going to dive into practical conversations around marriage, parenting, staying connected through the chaos, and what it truly means to build a partnership that lasts.
Yes.
So welcome. We are so excited to have you guys today. It's the first time we've had two people, and it's the first time we've also had
on the podcast.
So
I thought
welcome,
that might
Aaron.
be the case, yeah.
We're very excited. We're very excited. And I think we had a bunch of topics that we kind of thought through before, but I feel like maybe we just go off the cuff because parenting through marriage is something that's obviously so relatable to us and so many other parents out there. So why don't we start with this? So real life example, my kids are having a tough time sleeping these days. And that means that lack of sleep causes a lot of irritability. I'm not myself. And the first person that I take it out on is my husband because he is my rock and my person. And sometimes it's much easier to lash out on that person instead of someone else. So while I can be great in a work context, the irritable side comes out when I'm with him, and I know that's not okay. And he's also tired too. So how would you suggest handling this when you're both in this lack of sleep or in transition times, but still prioritizing your marriages?
Yeah. Well, you bring up even just a really good point is that our partner doesn't just bring out the best in us. They can also bring out the worst in us. And that goes both ways. And so that's really just something to be conscientious of. And I think the self-awareness that you have is so key. So for any listener, just being able to be humble and say, hey, this is something I can work on. This is something I'm doing is a huge step in and of itself. Now, when we have kids, because our daughter's almost 4, so we're past the hard sleep part, but we remember it vividly. Right. All of those circumstances, they add pressure to your relationship. So even though you had stress beforehand, maybe it was career stress before, family stress, when you are getting sleep deprived, when you aren't getting as much self-care, you're not even getting as much quality time, you have to know that you both are just under more pressure. So what does that mean? Having even more grace for each other. It's such a vulnerable time in a relationship, especially those early years, where it is a time to really be very discerning about when do I offer grace to my partner? When do we have the conversation? When is this about sleep? When is this about when we're disconnected? Because that's also another factor that I'm sure we'll discuss as well. Because it isn't just the surface level circumstances, we're not sleeping, I'm not getting time to myself. A lot of even issues that manifest in the relationship are because we're not feeling loved and connected too. So we can go off on a tangent there. But to your question, I think it first and foremost just starts with having a lot of grace for each other. And so then here's where I take it next. Are you communicating what you need? Because I know for myself, even if I start to get more reactive, short, sharp, any of that, it's usually because there's something I'm not expressing. So yes, I could say it's because I'm not getting good sleep, but if I take it deeper, there's something I'm not saying I either need or I'm feeling.
You're so right, because actually just yesterday I said that to my husband. So I think sometimes, and not to stereotype men and women, but I think sometimes we have a lot more shades of gray. My husband is a lot more practical, black and white. So problem, solution.
Him too.
So when I'm telling him about my fears and frustrations with our daughter climbing out of the crib and all of these things, he's kind of just practical about it. And I wanted him to hear out my emotional side of it. And I talked to him about it. And I was like, I don't want you to just say, we'll do this. I want you to validate my emotions. And he has listened and, has helped me instead of just kind of saying, okay, but we'll just fix it. It's hearing me out more. So I think you're so right about it. It's not just the no sleep. It's something I needed that I finally was able to share is him being more allowing for my emotions versus the practical side.
And you're right on there about also talking about how we're going to handle things differently, right? Because he's the most practical guy ever. So it'll be great to hear some of his thoughts too. But it's even dynamics that show up in the relationship in those early years of parenting, you're going to experience differently, and to not make each other the same. Right? It can't be but I want you to feel the same way as me and handle it the same way as me. There is some acceptance too. And it's great. I hope your husband was okay, all right, I see your point. This is different for you, because it's all about that receptivity. We don't have to be the same as long as we're receptive to each other.
Right. Okay. So
let's take it a step back. A lot of people listening are in a marriage or in a partnership. And I remember listening to one of your other podcasts about how the most difficult time of a marriage is. So let's talk about this transition and how we are challenged in our marriage in ways that we've never been challenged before. Because a lot of people, and we do vent-aways every Friday, a lot of vents are surrounding marriage and husbands, and people like, oh, I just want to I'm so angry at my husband, or they're just resentful, not in a phase of like this lovey-dovey partnership that maybe on their vows and their wedding day, they thought, oh, through thick and thin with kids, like they just looking at the bigger picture. But on the micro level, no one pisses us off more. So let's talk about this transition and parenting and marriage and the difficulties of it.
I think, one of the things you're referring to is there's a study that's been done that shows that marriage dissatisfaction peaks at 10 years of marriage. And so, all right, then why would that be? And there's a lot of different factors. One, that's often when a couple has young kids or multiple kids, 2 under 2. So there's a lot of dynamics there at play for that.
Career pressure as well, too.
Career pressures, thinking about the future. You have then just a lot of, if you don't have the communication and conflict resolution down, then your interactions have become like more destructive rather than constructive. And so then if you're not repairing that, then that builds up into resentment. Then you move into this transition of being parents, right? So not to go on too long, but it's been really helpful for me personally to think of marriage in the long term as existing on these 3 islands. And then each island has like a little bridge between them. So the islands are dysfunction, function, and connection. And so we get together in a marriage and the honeymoon phase, yes, but we make a lot of love account deposits and not a lot of withdrawals. So we have this high love account and we pretty much think that it's just going to go that way. But when you have big transitions in a marriage, you have this potential to go from connection island to function island or even dysfunction island. When we have kids, there's such a disruption to our normal day-to-day, our lifestyle, how we sleep, our nutrition, things that we don't know how to care for a child, or how do we do 2? How do we do 3 kids? And so there are so many changes and our interactions can become more negative or more withdrawals. So we move into this dysfunction island. You just can't exist in dysfunction island for very long without feeling overwhelmed, burdened, frustrated, resentful, because that's not what a marriage is about. So when we have these transitions, we need to make the appropriate steps towards functioning well. When sleep is hitting well, when our babies are eating, when breastfeeding is happening, when we're hitting on these structure elements, there's more harmony, there's more peace, and that feels way, way better. But we're not in a marriage just to function. So we have to remember we have to continue to take steps towards connection. So then parenting becomes this balance of, we're connected and then things happen with our kids and we go back to function. And then sometimes we have maybe a few weeks where we lose structure, we don't have the right agreements, our kids go through different developmental stages. So maybe we get into a little dysfunction. It's not that you don't get there. Do we recognize it together? And then do we put in the structure and agreements and follow through? We need to get back to function, maybe new lifestyle changes. Ultimately, and this is the big difference between men and women. Men will exist on function island way longer, where women need to feel that we're in connection island.
I would also just add that we aren't really aware of this, but we kind of think that our marriage is going to be the same just with kids. I definitely was a little bit naive, right? Same. And yes, people can anticipate, all right, I know because my parents told me there's going to be changes to sleep. I know that there's going to be difficulty when they, start to have their moods, and we're having to work on emotional regulation. So we might have gotten warnings about that. But what people don't talk about enough is how much it truly does change the way you connect. It isn't the same marriage. And in a sense, we have to honor that. It's almost like a death and a rebirth, not in a bad way. We don't look at death in a negative connotation for this. It's really that isn't the same marriage anymore. We are totally different people. Our identities have changed, our priorities, and also what we focus a lot on is just how we relate to each other and what we each need to feel connected. And I mean, we know it firsthand. So many of your interactions do become functional, as Aaron was talking about, and it's just so easy to lose sight of the connection. And that's when you start to feel like roommates. That's when you start to go, do you still love me? It's all about the kids. And that comes up.
Yeah, that hits really hard. I think the function state is a lot of the logistics. Like logistics takes up so much of my relationship time. And I know same with Dale. Like it's just like, you're taking her then and I'm going to take her drop off, pick up, like the food, this, like, there's just so many things when you're managing a family dynamic as well as a house. I feel like it can turn into such logistics. My husband and I have a rule actually that when we do have like a date night or date day, we cannot talk about logistics, even though it's like so hard not to open your calendar and do that. What piece of advice would you give to people who are just so in this like logistics heavy, I guess, function island? How can we help them move to more of a connection?
Well, it's funny you bring up date night because a lot of people go there, right? Like that's the first place people go to when you hear connection, staying close. How often do you go on a date night though?
Well, now that I'm not sleeping, not very much. But we've started to do date days.
And also people are spending so much money on childcare. We're not getting sleep. There's just so much in the day. At the end of the day, like, I don't want to go out for a dinner on a Tuesday night. Like,
and it's $300
and it's
for everything.
And then you pay for a babysitter when you've already spent tens of thousands of dollars post-tax on childcare in some ways. So when people are like, just go for a date night, it's not that easy. And then it's like, oh, we also have people's birthdays you have to take into account. We also have other people who are trying to get together with us and double date. Like, so even just like carving out time for the two of us, it's just a lot harder than people can.
So here's where we flip the script on that. And we love a date. When we get a date, we love it. And when we get a trip alone, which is not all the time, we love it. So we're not discounting that. The average couple's not doing that every week. So are you just connecting once a month? Are you just connecting once a quarter? So here's where we flip the script on that, is to focus on little ways you're staying connected every single day. Now, in the early years with children, that's going to look different than when they're more self-sufficient, than when you're teens. So you actually have to assess in this season of marriage, what does staying connected look like? So in the early years, that's going to look like, hey, do we wake up a few minutes before the kids just to get 15 minutes of coffee alone? Do we stay up a little bit later, but instead of watching TV or us falling asleep in one of the kids' bedrooms, do we, get a cocktail or tea and just catch up on our day? And more importantly, not talk about the to-dos, talk about how you both are really doing. How are you really feeling in your businesses? How are you really feeling about the kids? How are you just feeling as a human being? We find that so many couples, when we ask them, like, when was the last time you just talked about your feelings? They're like, oh, that's not very often. And so being able to have just that daily, like, check-in, and yes, you have to get creative. There is a trade-off. We know we're all tired. So we know it's tempting to say, I just don't have the energy. Let me watch something. But you pay something that there's a cost. And you don't want the cost to be your connection. And then we also, I think you had mentioned the love account concept. So
I want to add something about connection too, though, is it's not all things that are joyful and happy, let's say, in a very real sense. And, our daughter's almost 4. I will never forget that we can connect in suffering. We were trying to swaddle our daughter. We ended up getting rid of the swaddles. Like sleep sack for us was much better. It was 2 a.m. and we're trying to figure out the swaddle, and this one blanket's not doing it. And she was also having some like bathroom issues. And like we looked at each other and we're both suffering, right?
But we're laughing.
We don't have, but we're laughing with each other. And I think if you recognize that as a couple, so long as you keep it that we're on the same team, we're both going through this together, it's the moments where, like, I'm trying to subconsciously express to you that I'm tired and then this season is hard, but then your partner makes a comment about, well, you have more free time than I do, or you did bedtime last night. It's those little comments,
like a jab,
that are jabs, and
keeping
then
score.
It just takes away from what is already a very low love account. So it's looking at the micro moments, like how do we stay on the same team and feel that we're even connected in the suffering, rather than have that be something that further disconnects us or even takes a withdrawal from our love account.
I'll add just one more point too, because I know we're talking a lot about communicating as a form of connection too. But I also think in those early years when you aren't getting a lot of time together, it's the little ways to just show I'm thinking about you. So it's picking up their favorite treat on the way home. It's saying, hey, babe, like come over here. Let me massage your neck. Let me pick up their coffee in the morning, even though they weren't expecting that. Because I think we all start to notice, wow, so much attention's going to the kids. And we can almost be a little bit jealous. Like I noticed the other day, I was like, he's so cute with her. Like he's so playful and joyful and, all cuddly. And I said, like, I could use a little bit of more of that, So just if we forget to just show each other we're thinking of each other, it does start to feel like the kids are getting all the good parts of us.
I love that about the connection and suffering, because for me and my husband, like everything's been quote unquote standard for the last, obviously we had 2 kids, but in our careers in the last almost decade. And on the same day, we had a massive career shift, both of us. And I will say, even through this really, really tough period, I feel like him and I have reached this level of connection that when things were going well and this level of vulnerability that we have never reached before. Like when things were going well, I actually found that we were very focused on just like unimportant things. And we weren't actually checking in with each other. Our mental health and our well-being was just an afterthought. And it was a very technical relationship. Like obviously we had our moments of connection and things like that, but the day-to-day, but right now, like we're each other's lifeline. And I've been really open about how I've been feeling. And so is he. And we've just have seen each other just have at this point that I'm like, okay, even though we're not in a season where we're like celebrating and, going on trips and watching everyone in Europe while we're kind of just surviving, it's been this new unlock. And I think a lot of people don't realize that it can be a chance to foster strength and lean on each other in these darker moments than we realize. And it's not always about, okay, I have to go on this like really lavish trip or this really amazing date night and look at this couple. They're always, have hiring nannies. And it's like, you know what? Sometimes this moment, we're really like going through it, but we're really going through it together. So it just is interesting to flip the script.
Because some of those experiences, like you mentioned, like the vacations and the dates, sometimes those couples don't have depth.
Exactly.
Right? They don't, maybe some do, but some don't. And so we can relate so much to what you're saying actually, because so we had a young baby. This is going back to 2022. So she was a few months old and we experienced this like perfect storm in losing several big investments, like outside of our business. Like we were big in diversifying our income and they all failed at once. And we were in a really tough financial place. And we had this young baby to take care of. So we were really afraid, really going through it. But I think our bond got so much stronger in that time. And we weren't going on dates to stay connected. We were really just in the trenches of what do we do and how are we going to overcome this? But I think, a big motto for us is about staying on the same team and really being there to support each other. And through adversity, you can get stronger. But it's all about how you handle it. So even for people listening where maybe you don't have some of those circumstances going on, but you do have the stress of having kids, that's a hard season too. How are you handling it though? Are you staying united? Are you being there to support each other? Are you encouraging each other? Are you uplifting each other? Because it becomes so draining when you're both giving and giving and giving in all these other places, and then you're not filling each other up. You're draining each other more. And so I think, again, it's like whatever challenges you're facing, you can get closer and stronger if you make sure that you're handling it together.
I love what you brought up too, Aaron, also about like the laughter of like the swaddle, because I do think I'm feeling this a lot too. It's like, if I don't laugh, I'm going to cry. So like sometimes like when we're just looking at the monitor and I'm like, oh my God, again. And it's just like, we just both start laughing. And it's like, sometimes laughter is the best form of medicine too. And not just being like, oh, like, because you didn't put her diaper on right. Like, that's why like there's a lot of like blame game that you can go into. But sometimes just like laughing it off and being like, okay, like we're in this together. This is just part of life is the best therapy.
Yeah.
I have to bring this part up. It's a psychology term. It's called the fundamental attribution error. So you have to remember that. But the main thing is that we tend to attribute negative outcomes to people's personality, not the circumstance. And I've seen how that happens in marriage. Exactly what you're saying. It's like you can't put the diaper on right. You didn't get the nap time right. It's like, I just needed one day away. And, husband, you were the one responsible for the child. And what they didn't eat the lunch I had packed, right? So then you just think my partner's incompetent or they're not responsible. They don't follow through. Rather than there was some circumstance. This season is hard. We both haven't slept. Maybe it's that particular thing was new for my partner. They're figuring it out. We just don't have that grace.
Well, and then
that we would do for ourselves. We always do for ourselves. Oh, if there wasn't a great outcome, we attribute it to outside circumstances were in my favor.
Because we have the whole picture when it's ourselves.
Right.
We know
and
what
we
we're
give
going
ourselves
through.
a pass.
We give ourselves a pass.
It's like,
and
I didn't get a good night's sleep.
This is hard. Like I'm really doing my best. And yeah, I would challenge, we do challenge couples. I think there is a level of your best could be elevated a little bit, like in terms of be more clear about your roles and responsibilities, make more clear promises and agreements, and follow through.
Yeah, I also think it's just being okay with your partner doing it differently than you. Right. And we recorded a whole episode last week actually about the name of it was Everything Goes to Shit When We Leave, right? So we leave and it's like they don't eat the lunch, as you said, like someone falls, like this happens, like the nap was missed. But sometimes it's just about being like, well, I get to go out, that my husband is actually holding down the fort. And if it's not quote unquote perfect, that's totally fine. And I always laugh, sometimes I ask my husband, well, what did she eat today? And it's just all fruit or all something. And I'm like, but how about the protein or whatever? But I also have to just be like, it's fine. She's well fed. She's happy. She's safe. She's healthy. And that's all that matters.
Yeah. To quote Jocelyn, and this is a part of our new book, so I'm not giving the title, but de-escalate now and debrief later. So often, we get into these moments and it's not the time to say what we could have, should have done better. Heightened emotion is present. We need to de-escalate. Just like you said, everything is okay. Let's help our baby regulate. Let's regulate ourselves. Okay, we're out of that circumstance situation. Okay, later on, let's debrief. What could we do better? Are the things we have in place serving the long-term value structure we have? There's probably a real question. Is our baby getting the nutritional value they need? It's not the moment to address it when the lunch wasn't eaten.
Or the kid is
de-escalate
crying.
Now. And hey, let's revisit. Is our baby getting the nutrition they need overall? If not, let's make the adjustments we need.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with in the moment. We all know about de-escalating, but it is so hard to do that. Sometimes you're just filled with rage and you just want to explode. So how could someone listening, what tips could we bring with us the next time we're in an argument or feeling like our cup is just overflowing?
Maybe let's paint a picture.
Yeah, what are the exact actions that someone could go through or memorize so that they can be equipped?
Before I lay that out, which I will, because I want to really point out something important that you're saying is that, so when we have kids, right? And even when they're babies, but definitely when they're getting to the 2s, the 3s, you're doing so much work to co-regulate with them, right? Co-regulating is being able to see, okay, my child is dysregulated. How does my presence of being calm help them regulate themselves? So that's what co-regulation is, as opposed to self-regulation, which is, I'm feeling really upset right now. Let me take some breaths, right? It's all about the self. Kids don't know how to self-regulate yet. That's not something you're born with. So how they learn that is by co-regulating with parents. Now I say that because, so we're doing so much of that with our kids. What happens is we then forget that we also need to co-regulate with our partner. And people miss those cues. They think, well, you're an adult, get your crap together, right? That's what we can say to ourselves. So it's maybe our partner seems stressed, worried, overwhelmed, snappy, short. Rather than seeing my partner's dysregulated right now, we'll feed into it. And that's so often what creates this unnecessary conflict. It's it wasn't even about us. I'm just stressed from the situation. I'm overwhelmed. We're rushed. I got all these things to do. So I say that because the de-escalate now, debrief later, which is a motto we encourage people to remember. It's a way to see, all right, one of the best things I can do for my family and my partner is recognize dysregulation. Recognize dysregulation in myself, my child, my partner, and think, what's a supportive response right now? So let's imagine
I have an example. We actually, just a few days ago, we're talking about that we needed to do a little bit better. So our daughter's coming up on 4. 3 was quite different than 2. Jocelyn called it the 3-nager, rather than the terrible 2s.
Oh, what are we in for?
The 3s are interesting, I'll tell you.
So, and Jocelyn realized, and I agree because I see it. Our daughter tends to treat Jocelyn almost worse than she does me.
Like she'll take more out on me.
We hear that's common.
Yeah, whether it's with her arms, I don't want to say hitting, but like climbing, scratching, reaching for her face, getting more verbal. She just doesn't seem to do that with me. And we had come up with a plan that we're not going to intervene. Like, we know how we want to try to talk with her, understand her emotion. She doesn't have all the language. So like, let's sit, debrief or de-escalate with her, try to understand what she needs. But that's not working as well for this season. So Jocelyn told me just a few days ago that she's feeling like she's becoming the bad cop, or like now I'm like the good cop. So we said the other day, well, we don't interrupt each other trying to regulate with our daughter, but what I can do is if she gets to this place where she's dysregulated more quickly, I'm going to be the one to come in and say, now, Sky, we ask you to do this. And since you're not, me and you're going to have to go to your room and talk about this. Where before, Jocelyn was having to fight with her a little bit, and then Jocelyn would take her to the room. And that's what was having her feel like a bad cop. So I said, all right, let me take this role on. And typically what we found is if I do even make mention that, okay, Sky, you and I are going to have to go to your room, that almost changes the behavior by itself. So that was like more of a practical thing that we were dealing with. And I didn't even realize it, that she was feeling like the bad cop. And I don't want you to feel like that with our daughter. So how can we change the role while not disrespecting how the other's trying to parent?
Yeah.
And come up with, and it's probably going to be just, this is our next season. We're going to have to adjust, as she gets older. But
this is in contrast to trying to correct each other in the moment. Because that's where so many couples get triggered by each other is you're coaching me on how to handle this situation now when what I need is like your support, or I need you to help keep things calm. So couples pick the wrong time to debrief. So that's why it's, all right, let's de-escalate the situation first. And then if we, think there's things the other person could do better as parents, let's debrief later when we're regulated. So it's all about like that timing and really making sure you both feel like you have each other's backs.
So how do you manage though when you're just really overwhelmed and you're having like a tiff with your partner and your kids are there, but it's like sometimes you have to really bite your tongue because your kids are listening, but that's also really hard. And obviously you want to set a good example for your kids, but like in the moment, sometimes like maybe if in that example that you shared, Aaron, like Jocelyn, you're just like completely just about to lose it. Like it's really hard to just stop and bite your tongue. I don't know if there's like some practical tips.
Here's what I would say is rather than just biting your tongue, we can name what we're feeling. It's actually because kids sense your frustration, right? They can see it. And your kids are actually almost more attuned than parents because they haven't turned that switch off.
Right.
So they're very aware. They're noticing, they're learning. Their brains are starting to, really connect the dots on things. And so one of the things we can do as parents is name it. Like we don't have to fake it. We don't have to say, mommy's fine. Like we can say, hey, mommy's a little frustrated right now. I'm just overwhelmed. It's, but it's okay. I'm going to take a few breaths. That teaches kids, number one, everyone gets frustrated and overwhelmed sometimes. That's part of being human. And taking some breaths, that's a good thing to do, right? So I think that's where parents have this idea they need to always be strong, need to just bite their tongue, hold it together. And it's like, that's actually not doing the best justice for the kids. So I would, say, give everyone listening permission to name what you're feeling, of course, appropriately, not like, cursing, and things like that, and be able to say, here's what I'm going to do to regulate. Even if that means maybe you do reach a max where just taking a few breaths in the room isn't enough. And you're like, you know what? I think I need 10 minutes to myself. So, mommy's going to just go wash her face, something like that. So what you need to do can be different, but I think it's helpful for the whole family to just be able to openly talk about feelings.
And it shows kids that, you know, they have a wide range of emotions and they don't know how to process it sometimes. Like, as we said, the hitting, like we're not immune to our kids doing that. And it's when you can call out and separate the emotion from you, sometimes one that helps de-escalate and it helps you calm down, but it also can sometimes stop the spiral. And then also it opens you up to receiving support, because when you say, I'm fine, you're shutting off the door for support to come in. But sometimes when you're like, hey, I'm feeling upset or I'm feeling some type of way, they could be like, hey, like that's not what so-and-so meant, or that's, you know, why don't we do this? And I think that's a really practical tip, that whether it's with your partner or with front of your kids or even by yourself, to just name it out, or even name it out in your head. Like, I'm scared, I'm worried, anything, it can really help the situation.
Oh yeah. Even with our partner, especially, it's if Aaron goes, I'm fine, it's like, you're not fine. Like, no one's really fine when they say they're fine, right? That's usually just a mask. And so really being able to also create this space between us where we can say what we really are feeling. And sometimes we don't want to talk about it right then. We can say, you know, hey, I'm actually feeling frustrated about something, whether it has to do with us or something else. But you know what? I think I just want to cool off for a little bit. I'll, you know, share it with you later. Really just having that, again, safe space where feelings are welcome, taking space is okay. We can come back to this. Like, we're available to listen when they're ready.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up is Dale and I actually recorded an episode about this about a year ago on intimacy, because a lot of people write in about having a hard time with intimacy once they have a kid. And I listened to one of your podcasts and you had a great kind of approach about this, that intimacy is also just, it's not just sex, right? There's other forms of intimacy. There's emotional connections and things like that. So what would you say to moms out there struggling with intimacy, both in the forms of physical and emotional, and how to get back to a state that feels right for them?
Yeah. So before getting into the hows, it's expanding on what you just said, right? Intimacy is closeness. So we want to feel close and fulfilled and joyful in the relationship. And that's going to look many different ways. It's going to look so different in the newborn stage. It's going to look different when our daughter's 4 now. It's going to look different when she's 14. Which is surreal to think you'll be 50 when she's 14. Like, it's crazy. And so one thing we do is we very openly communicate about intimacy. And this is something we encourage all couples to do, is not have it be this thing that you like don't discuss. And then you're wondering, are they satisfied? Are they happy? I'm not sure. We haven't been intimate in a couple of weeks. Do they think about that? I don't know. Should we want each other? Should we be more? You're just having that conversation in your head rather than openly checking in. Maybe it's once a week, maybe it's casual. At a minimum, I would say a once a month check-in on it. We're big on having a family meeting check-in. We have a whole guide for it. There's a weekly, a quarterly, and a yearly check-in, just to proactively communicate and be able to be like, hey, how are you feeling about our intimacy, both emotionally and physically? And not taking it personally what the other person says. It's information, and really understanding, okay, what makes you feel close? Because so many couples get focused on frequency of having sex. And early years, most couples are not having sex every day. The average would be about once a week. So again, having that like grace for, we're going to go through different seasons of our marriage. We just want to make sure we're talking about it. Because then you can, if you aren't, you're making assumptions about each other. You're both taking it personally. You're thinking they don't want me. Rather than, we've had conversations where what we end up finding out is, you know, hey, you tend to initiate at night and I'm so tired.
Right before you go to bed and your mask is on and you're like.
We did a reel on that and it went crazy viral. Or I act out like, not tonight, hon, right? And I'm like in bed sleeping. So, and where I could openly say, hey, you initiate a lot, like right when I'm most tired, right when I go to bed. I said, what I would prefer is like morning, right? Or because we do work together too. So it can even be like during the day, which we know some couples, you're at offices. So that's maybe not possible. But we've had some couples be like, I come home for lunch break, right? Or things like that. You have to get creative for your circumstances, but being able to talk about, do you like when I initiate? Do you like how I initiate? What feels good to you? But here's the biggest thing for women. is because we tend to have what's called responsive desire, that's in contrast to spontaneous, which tends to be, there's always exceptions, but men tend to have spontaneous desire type, which is like you could brush up their leg, or just they could see something visual that kind of makes them feel turned on. For women, especially the longer we're together and becoming mothers, we become even more like responsive, which means we're responsive to how connected we feel in the relationship, to the environment. Like even the room is messy. Like I don't want to be intimate when the room is so messy. That doesn't make me feel relaxed and calm. Or sensory experiences. Hey, if you haven't touched me all day and now you're wanting to be intimate, that doesn't, really get me going. But if he's been massaging my neck or coming up behind me while we're doing dishes and like starting with a massage, there's all the specifics, but just saying, how do we feel in terms of our connection? And him being open and receptive to, if I say, well, I don't really feel emotionally connected, and that impacts me wanting physical intimacy. So before even the how-tos, it's being able to just openly communicate about, do we feel emotionally connected? Do we like the way we're approaching physical intimacy? Because sometimes it's even in just the initiation.
Yeah, there's so many assumptions. Both Dale and I read this book called The Queen's Code.
Yeah, I know.
Have you read it? Honestly, it's amazing for anyone out there. But it really breaks things down, and it just shows you that you assume so many things. Your partner does the same thing. And when you don't communicate about it, I think maybe it's a lot of programming. We were told that this is like a taboo topic and you shouldn't be talking about it. And so we just assume narratives in our head. But once you actually talk about it and you say like the nighttime versus morning or during the day, like things like that, or do you feel satisfied? It's just so important. And it actually can really benefit your relationship.
Yeah. And not taking it personally, right? Like it's all about the safe space in the relationship. Like you can overcome anything if you can talk about it.
Yeah. I think that can be really hard sometimes for a lot of couples, because from my experience and with a lot of my friends, usually the woman is the more vulnerable one emotionally. And a lot of men don't know how to be vulnerable and open. And like they just have been conditioned to not really feel their feelings and just, as we said, black and white. Whereas us women, a lot of us are more feelers. Obviously, this is a generalization, and there are men out there who are like that, and women who are maybe more black and white, but it can be hard for that to fall on the woman's shoulders. And what are some things that we could do to kind of open up our partners if they're, not as vulnerable?
Men, I think, tend to be a little less assertive, and we also want to be agreeable. We want to be considerate of our partners. But then we tend to say yes to things that we may have a different opinion on or we'd want to do differently. And so then that kind of erodes over time, where we start to feel a little bit more resentful. So then we start to say even less. So one thing is, I think, for men to be able to counteract that. But if we're going to be assertive, then it's important how it's received. So it's a delicate balance, because if I haven't been saying very much in the relationship, Jocelyn might not even catch when I've been assertive, because it could be kind of quiet, it could be kind of in passing, kind of passive. So my invitation to men is, you have to be more assertive. To your point, know more of what I'm actually looking for. Be proactive, not reactive. But then if I'm going to do that and feel as if that's rejected, I'm not going to do it again. So the invitation to women is, and again, if you're talking about this, hey, I'm going to be more proactive and assertive. But when I do, I'm going to shut down pretty quick if I feel like you give me a different opinion or it feels rejected. So like as I start to become more assertive, I really need you to receive it fully. Like ask more questions, be more curious, be interested to try out one of my ideas, even if you disagree. So you have to create this atmosphere where if I'm going to be assertive, it's going to be received well. Otherwise, men take it as criticism, and then I just don't say anything, and it just builds into like resentment.
Yeah. So we have to foster them being more emotional and more vulnerable, because I think per the Queen's Code, it's like it's so rooted in masculinity to kind of like protect and to be that rock and to be that never swaying, like whatnot. And by providing the safe space to talk about it, asking certain questions allows them to feel comfortable to keep sharing that.
Yeah.
And, some men will share more and then that'll be like vulnerable. And some men, it'll feel vulnerable if they just got to say 2 sentences, right? So we can't say like it's one way or another. It's based on personality. So, knowing your partner, knowing what vulnerability looks like, I might not be sharing a lot of things, but for me to say, that was really hard. I felt kind of disrespected by our daughter yesterday. Like that might be it. But for that to be received by Jocelyn, I could totally get that. That could be, for me internally, huge. That could be the most vulnerable I've been in a long time. Where the outside observer, that would just be the start of a conversation.
And I like how you said acknowledge and like reward almost for when they do take these small actions. It's the same thing if, your husband gets you flowers from the store and surprises you. And if you don't act excited, he probably will shut down and not do it again. But if you're like, oh my gosh, you made my day, you'd be like, oh, easy win. I can do that again. And I think it's the same thing for vulnerability. When they open up, it's kind of like, wow, thank you for sharing. It's really like helpful for me. And just show that like by them taking that action and that step, they kind of got rewarded by like your peace and your happiness. Because I think at the end of the day, this again is a bit of a generalization, but men like want to know that they're successful in making you happy as per the Queen's Code. They want to make sure that they if they know that they can't make you happy, they're just like, they just give up. It's like, well, I can't really, there's not much I can do here. But if these little things that they're doing prove that they can work and be successful, they're like, okay, well, clearly I'm a success, so I'm going to keep going at it. And that's why I get really excited when my husband gets me gifts. I'm like, success. No.
Yeah.
But it just is very like, I think, rooted in how they learn, which is for us, we make it so much more serious and we hope that they could understand our thoughts and we do appreciate it, but we may not express it. And I think it's just so important that they know how appreciated these little things are.
I think too, to even like deepen this, what's getting revealed here too is really having some conversations as a couple about what they witnessed growing up. Because so much of what informed them about how to love a man or a woman is what they witnessed. And so just even like having that be an open conversation of, hey, what did you witness between your parents? Like, how did your dad operate? How did he show love? Because we've had a lot of, I definitely can say things for women too, but since we're talking about men, men actually say verbatim, my dad did not show how to love. He showed how to provide and come home and have like give us structure and rules, right? Which is what some dads were like. Everyone was different. And so they're saying, I feel like I'm learning now as an adult. And I'm a dad. I'm already a dad, but I feel like I'm learning now because, he didn't really show me what it looks like to be emotionally attuned, to check in. And this is what I hear a lot is that they had very critical dads. And so they only got love when they performed well, whether in sports or academically, because that's maybe what their dads really valued. And so they now associate love with getting praise. And I get praise when I do things well. So that then lends to they can actually be more sensitive when they get negative feedback. That was something we worked through a lot, was being able to give negative feedback and not have that always be received as criticism. And yeah, so there's just so much this is what I'm really passionate about right now is around what was modeled to us. What did we witness? What did we learn? What did we not see? Because that's also a big part of the equation too. What did we not witness from our parents? And then what are we now trying to change for us, for our marriage, and then even the generations we're raising?
It's amazing how much, once you have a child, how much childhood triggers come up, not just with your partner, but like with yourself. And I know Dale did this too, but like when we both had kids, we went to couples therapy, not because there was something wrong, but we just wanted to kind of like, now we just put a kid in the mix. Like we should kind of talk about communication and stuff moving forward. And a lot, to your point, Jocelyn, came up around like what we saw modeled for us from our childhood. And I think sometimes it's easy to assume with your partner that, oh, they had the same background that you did. They saw the same thing that you did, but it's almost always opposite or not the same. And I think it's really important to understand that so that you can have more compassion and understand where his triggers or her triggers are coming from based on how they were raised.
I mean, we could not have had more different of upbringings. Like that's one thing that's so interesting, right? His parents are still married 5 decades in. Mine went through a very tumultuous divorce when I was a young teen. And we witnessed completely different communication styles, conflict styles. And so you might think when they would hear a marriage lasting a long time, like, oh, that's the perfect upbringing, right? Christian household, still married. And in many ways, they did give him such an incredible upbringing. They were stable, secure, loving. They showed up. But some things that weren't modeled, like that his parents aren't, and they even say this openly, right? They aren't communicative. They don't talk about feelings. When conflict would happen, they both would just get quiet, walk into separate rooms. And so that would, early on, I would be like, that makes me feel abandoned. It makes me feel like I have no access to what you're feeling, what you want, being able to listen to me. So we really had to, instead of just taking those things personally, really unpack that. Unpack what was modeled. What do we want to carry forward? What do we not want to carry forward?
Yeah, that's so interesting because I think I come from a divorced family and so does my husband. So we're double divorced. And I think that one thing that we often think about is people who are raised by, this perfect white picket fence family, nothing ever went wrong. But as I talk to a lot of my friends who came from this quote unquote perfect family, they have a lot of trauma from the environments they've grown up in. They go, you think it looked perfect, but this is what was really going on. And I know there's statistics against people who are children of divorce and their marriages. We are aware of that. We're like, okay, we know. But I also think there is strength in you've seen what's torn a family apart and you've worked. I had to be in therapy at a very young age. My parents took us to therapy. And I think we're very conscientious about what can go wrong. I think no one grows up in a perfect family. I mean, maybe there's someone who does, but we all grow up with stuff. So as long as we are working and recognizing like, hey, this is not what we want to carry into our marriage. And I know that my kids are going to also look back and be like, this is what my parents did. And we will cause trauma. And I'm not saying that. I know millennials are really like working on it, but I know there's going to be stuff, but I think it's very important as long as we're self-aware and work through that instead of just passing it on to our kids blindly or not talking about our feelings or not acknowledging what we went through. There has to be a part of it that we're like, okay, we're working towards making this better.
Yeah. We're the generation of cycle breakers.
Yeah. And it's important to understand your partner's traumas. And they can be big traumas, little traumas, but it's so important to understand because sometimes I find if I'm not aware of his triggers, like I will be the one to trigger him. Right. But if I'm aware that these things trigger him based on childhood or limiting beliefs, then I can be much more conscious of that.
Yes.
And I can kind of like preempt.
Oh yeah. We'll have to do another follow-up episode on the upbringing.
Part 2. So I know we're just about out of time, but I wanted to bring up one thing to end. We were both told when we had kids that, yeah, you should prioritize your kids because, have kids, but actually then the person who should come first is your partner. Well, curious to hear your thoughts.
So what's funny is I kind of have some qualms with the whole, like, put your partner first, just because sometimes that feels impractical. Like literally there are times where your child has to be first right then, right? There's survival. So the way I think about it instead of like first versus second is that your marriage is the foundation of your family. So by you two making sure you stay strong, you stay connected, you repair, you communicate, you actively work on your patterns, that when you are strong, the whole family can thrive. So that just helps me think about it differently as opposed to like order or like putting who's first, who's second. It's more like, no, we're the foundation. Like our family rests on us. And so I think that's a more practical and empowering.
And I love what you guys really preach about, like marriage. It's not hard. It's about being intentional. I think that right there just makes you take a step back and be like, I just have to be intentional about how I show up and what I say, because sometimes it gets so easy to get in that roommate phase or to just like say whatever you want to them because they're quote unquote always going to be there versus just being intentional like you would with someone else too.
Yeah, it takes like anything that you care about. your business? Like, are you like, oh yeah, business is always easy? No, part of what you love is that it challenges you, that you overcome things, that you learn. So anything that sports, if you want to be a great tennis player, a golfer, anything, when you care about something, you want to be great at it. And so having that same mindset with marriage, like I care about marriage, I care about this family, so I want to be a great partner and put the work to that. So
no, you guys are amazing. I could have talked to you for hours, but I know you have
I
a hard
feel
stop, so we'll
that.
definitely have to do a part 2. But where can everyone find you? You know, you have books, you have a podcast, you have your Instagram, which is super informative and funny. So please share.
Thank you. Well, we will be announcing our next book in the coming months. We can't wait for that. So definitely like plug into our social media so you can stay tuned. It's Meet the Freemans. That's our handle. Our website URL is also Meet the Freemans. We have in-person workshops. We have guides. We have 30-day couples challenges. We've had over 45,000 couples do our 30-day challenge.
Wow.
We have 3 challenges actually, and some people have done all 3 of them. We have just so many resources on their web classes. So go to Meet the Freemans on Instagram and the URL.
Sounds good.
Thank you
guys
great
so
having
much.
you on.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.